going to do Ecuadorian potato pancakes. Now, potatoes originated in this hemisphere, so it's nice to try something from that area. All right, we're going to start with a tablespoon of vegetable oil and let it get a little bit warm, and then I've got a cup of onions that we're going to add to that. And we're going to let those saute just a little bit, maybe 2 to 3 minutes, just until they start to soften up. And while that happens, I'm going to go ahead and move over here. And this is actually step one. You're going to take 2 pounds of potatoes. I mean, depending on the size, it's going to be 4 or 5 potatoes. And you're going to steam them in their jackets, or you're going to boil them in their jackets, whichever way you want to do it. When they're done, you're going to take them out and cut them in half so they can cool fairly quickly. Now, this is something that, again, you could do ahead of time if you needed to. And you can either put them through a ricer, you can mash them with a fork like I'm doing here, you could use a pastry blender like this, or a regular potato masher. But the idea is to get them broken down fairly well. And you want to make sure they're nice and soft as well, because we're going to be moving these into a patty form so that we can actually cook them in the skillet. I'm going to go back and check this one again. Okay, this is going to cook, as I said, 3 to 4 minutes. I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next step. Well, actually, I think I'm going to wait and let these soften up, because I want to fold those into those potatoes in a little bit. I'm going to finish mashing these. And then we're going to add some seasonings to the onion and cook those together. And once those are all cooked together, that cooking with the onion enhances the flavor of the other ingredients that we're going to add. And once those are all blended together well, then we'll come back and fold that mixture into the potato mixture. All right, you can see that these have started to become more transparent. To this, I've got a half a teaspoon of garlic powder, a half a teaspoon of salt, half a teaspoon of paprika, a 1/4 of a teaspoon of coriander, and an 1/8 of a teaspoon of ground cumin. We're going to stir these together and let those toast a little bit with the onion for probably 2 to 3 more minutes, so we get that nice cooked flavor in the herbs and the spices. So these, you can see we've cooked them down. We're going to add them to the potatoes that we've mashed fairly well. And then we're going to add something. Now, usually when I've made potato pancakes here in the States, one of the things my mom taught me was that we would make sure everything was cool enough, and then we would put an egg in here to try and hold everything together. We're going to do something a little bit different in that we're going to add cheese to it and stir that in well. I'm using mozzarella. If you had queso fresco, you could use that. And then a half a teaspoon of black pepper and a half a teaspoon of salt. And this may be enough ingredients that we can do what we need to do. However, I'm going to reserve the privilege of adding some flour to it if it's not holding together the way I want, because we're actually going to have to take it and form it into balls and then make patties from those, flatten those. So you want a patty that ends up being about 3 inches across and about a 1/2 inch thick. So we'll get this stirred together and then we'll move forward with that. You can see that it would form into a patty, but it's a little bit soft, and so I'm going to stir in. You could stir in anywhere between 1/4 to a 1/2 cup of flour to this, and kind of work it like you would a dough. So I'm just going to move it around and see if we can get it in there and get it to blend in fairly well. And if you find out that as you're cooking them that it's not holding up the way you want it to, you can always add a little bit more. Some people will take a little bit of the flour as well and put it on a plate, and they will add, or once they get the patty made, before they put it in the oil, they will dip it in the flour, and that may help give you a little bit better of a crisp crust to it. So I think that's fairly well done. I'm going to go ahead and add, I've got 2 tablespoons of vegetable oil. I'm going to put that in the pan and let that start to get warm while we form the patties. So you're going to have to do a little bit of experimentation to find out exactly how much potato you need to get 3 inches across and 1/2 inch thick. It's going to be a little bit bigger than a walnut, but there you go. There's one of them ready, and we'll just keep going until we've used all the potato mixture. Once you get the patties made, it's about 3 minutes per side once they're in. Now this needs to be a medium-low kind of heat. We don't want them cooking really fast. So if they're starting to get a little bit too brown, you may try to turn them down. Also, if you're having trouble with the crust staying in the pan, which is something that I've experienced, a little bit lower heat, using a non-stick pan may help. But just kind of experiment until you get where you need to be. These have been on for about 3 minutes on each side. You can see that both sides have gotten that nice toasty color. Now, if you decide that you've used more oil than you want, you could potentially put this onto a paper towel, but they're really not strong enough to withstand draining the way some of the other things like a sausage patty or a ground beef patty would. And there you go. This would be a serving, a couple of patties of Ecuadorian potato pancakes. It's really fun to try something from a different culture, something that you aren't familiar with, and see how familiar it is to the kinds of things that you grew up eating anyway. I hope you'll try this one. For Oklahoma Gardening, I'm Barbara Brown.
We hope you enjoyed this video. It's part of our Oklahoma Gardening YouTube channel. You can also find even more videos on our OK Gardening Classics YouTube channel. And join us on social media for great gardening tips, photos, and discussion.